Squiz Kids acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we podcast, the Turrbal and Combermary people.
Squiz Kids!
It's your daily news fix. Fun, free, fresh.
Hello and welcome to Squiz Kids Today, your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you. I'm Bryce Corbett. It's Thursday, November 2. In Squiz Kids Today, Albo goes to China. Queensland fires flare. Earl, the gold star kelpie, and the moose that went to school. That's what's making news, kids style.
The lowdown.
Fresh from visiting the US President Joe Biden in Washington, Aussie PM Anthony Albanese is again packing his bags for another overseas trip, this time heading to China for meetings with China's President Xi Jinping, the first time in 7 years an Aussie PM has made the trip. So why is that a big deal? I mean, people hop on planes and travel overseas all the time. Well, it's a big deal because for the past 5 years or so, Australia's relationship with China has not been all that great. You've heard the term frenemies, right? Yeah, well, it hasn't even been that functional, because we don't see eye to eye on everything. Ahead of his visit, the PM has said we'll cooperate where we can and disagree where we must. So why is it important that we have good relationships with a country like China? China, like the United States, is what's called a superpower, a country so big, whose economy is so powerful that it's important for us to be on good terms with them. That's true for most countries in the world, but especially true for Australia because of where we're positioned on the world map, meaning we're more exposed to China than many other countries. Plus, with so many people living over there, some 1.4 billion people at last count, there are lots of Chinese people who could buy stuff that we produce here in Australia. Now get this, this year we exported, which means sent to China, more than 200 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars worth of Australian-made goods and services. And that, my friends, is a lot. This is all what we call international diplomacy and geopolitics. And think about how impressed your folks will be when you bring this topic up around the dinner table tonight. Queensland firefighters were still on high alert yesterday as bushfires continued to burn west of Brisbane and close to the New South Wales border in places like Tara, Warwick, Tenterfield and Wallangarra. People have been evacuated from their homes as hot, dry winds and months of no rain have created prime conditions for bushfires. Stay safe out there, Squiz Kids listeners from that part of the country. We're all thinking of you.
Spin the globe.
Each day we give the world globe a spin and find a news story from wherever it stops. And today we've landed in Massachusetts, a state in the United States where a moose has dropped into a school. Parents doing the morning school drop-off on Monday could hardly believe their eyes when a fully grown moose wandered between the cars, sending kids and teachers scrambling. Now, moose aren't known for being especially aggressive, which is a fancy word for dangerous or threatening, but local police nevertheless put out an alert warning people to give the moose a wide berth if it showed up again. Maybe it was just rocking up for sip and crunch. A moose on the loose. I've stuck a link to video of it in today's episode notes.
Animal Kingdom.
From moose in North America to working dogs in Australia we go, and specifically to Earl the kelpie, who has just been named Australia and New Zealand's #1 working dog. So, what's a working dog? It's the name given to dogs who help out on farms, herding sheep and cattle and generally being useful. And what makes Earl so special? He wore a tracking device for the duration of the competition which showed that he ran faster and longer than any other working dog in Australasia. We're talking 14 kilometres per hour on average, across an average of not one but 2 marathon distances every day. Wow! And do you know what makes him even more special? He's blind in one eye, following a mystery accident, which means he occasionally bumps into things. Which sounds a bit like me when I'm trying to find the bathroom in the middle of the night. Earl, you're a dead-set legend, and Squiz Kids salutes you. And yes, of course, we've stuck a link to photos of Earl in today's episode notes. You're welcome.
It's Q&A time.
Have you ever wondered what it must be like to be the Prime Minister of Australia? Have you ever stopped to think what it must have been like to be the first female Prime Minister Australia has ever had? Well, now you can find out, as our Squiz Kids Q&A with former Aussie PM Julia Gillard drops today. Yep-a-doo. Answering questions that you sent in, she talks about life in an Adelaide migrant camp, her earliest memories of school, her favourite bands growing up, and the women who influenced her. She also speaks of the weight of responsibility she felt becoming Prime Minister, plus the sexism she encountered along the way. But mostly, she sounds a rallying cry for kids all over the country to dream big, work hard, and never ever let their gender define them. If you're listening on an app, the pod should play automatically at the end of this episode. Otherwise, you can find it by searching the Squiz Kids feed or via our website, squizkids.com.au.
Newshounds.
Every Thursday, Squizzy the Newshound sticks his head into Squiz Kids HQ to report back on fishy things like misinformation that he's sniffed out on the internet. And he's been one busy newshound this week as the Israel-Hamas conflict continues to flare overseas. It's common, whenever there's a war, for the two sides to try to influence the way people think using something called propaganda. Propaganda is information that is sent out to try and win people over to your side, and sometimes it's information that's not quite true. Misinformation. All sides in all wars throughout history have used this tactic. It's not just one side or the other. The only difference these days is that with social media and technology like Photoshop that allows anyone to alter photos or videos, there's a lot more of it being seen on a daily basis by a lot more people. It's why we have to be super careful if we find ourselves on social media, be it Instagram or TikTok or watching YouTube videos, that we don't find ourselves suddenly exposed to videos or posts that are not real. And it's why we should always, as Squizzy says, stop, think, and check. And especially when it comes to content about the current conflict, be extra careful what algorithm rabbit holes you get sucked down. And always, always speak to an adult if you see stuff online that makes you feel uncomfortable. Safe surfing, people.
Time for the quiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. What's the population of China, give or take? Yeah, well done if you remembered the number being 1.4 billion people. Question number 2. Name the former Aussie PM who's in today's Squiz Kids Q&A. Yes, of course, it's Julia Gillard. Question number 3. What's the name of Australia's #1 working dog? Yeah, his name is Earl.
Shout outs.
It's November 2. Today is Day of the Dead in Mexico. Ooh, which sounds kind of scary, but it's actually quite nice. It's where families pause to remember loved ones who have passed away. It's also a special day for these Squiz Kids celebrating a birthday today. Eason from Caversham, Maylee from Unanderra, Madeline from Forest Lake, Daniel from Canberra, Tasman from Marimbula, Tiernan from Sydney, Ava from Belrose, and Samuel and Isaiah, who are listening all the way over there in Samoa, and Eva, who is listening all the way over there in Warsaw in Poland. And a belated birthday shout-out goes to Leander from Tarragindi. Classroom shout-outs today go to all of the years 5 and 6 students at Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Primary School in Caringbah, to years 3 to 6 with Mrs. Donnelly at Kulungalok Public School, Class 11R with Miss Toole at St Mary's Cathedral College, Class 6RI with Ms Riley at St Peter's Girls' School in Stonyfell, Class 5CC with Mrs Cook at St Francis Xavier Primary School in Ballarat, Class 5-6A with Mrs Turner at Landsborough State School, hope you guys have been safe up there with the fires, and finally to Class 5B Kingfishers with Mr Davies and Mrs McNeil at Emmaus Christian School in Dixon. Don't forget, if you've got a birthday coming up and you want a shout out, or if you're after a classroom shout out, drop us a line at squizkids@thesquiz.com.au or fill out the form on our website. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening to Squiz Kids today. We'll be back again tomorrow with our Kids versus Adult Weekly News quiz, so you can see who's been paying the most attention to the week that just was. Plus, of course, all of our weekend birthday shout-outs. And if you love what we do, don't forget to chuck us a big 5 stars in your podcasting app. In the meantime, you know what to do. Get out there and have a most excellent day. Over and out.